What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Rangers. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-hosts, Eric Wilson and Collin Alcabes. We're back. We're hitting you with the trio today, and we're going to be talking about Artemi Panarin and whether or not the New York Rangers should consider moving on from the veteran forward. If they did, they could clear a lot of money, get that big contract off the books, but then they're sacrificing a really talented player who's helped them in many ways through the regular seasons. However, we all know postseasons have been the issue for Panarin. So we're going to go ahead and discuss Artemi Panarin in today's episode, break down whether or not the Rangers should trade him. But before we dive into all that, make sure to leave a like if you do enjoy this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts on the topic down below in the comment section. And without further ado, Eric, how are you doing today, my friend? Before I dive into Collin and ask him how he's doing, how are you doing, and what are your initial thoughts on the potential of trading Artemi Panarin?
I'm doing great, Anthony. Thank you for asking. I'm very happy that we finally have the three-man, No Way Home-esque video coming out right now. And of all the topics we could do it on, I'm happy it's this one because, as many of you know, Artemi Panarin is my favorite player on the Rangers and in the NHL. So it's a little bit of a sensitive subject right here. Panarin possibly being traded away. I'd be devastated, but I understand why the Rangers might consider it.
Yep, it's definitely something worth considering and something worth discussing. So, Collin, how are you doing today, my friend? And what are your thoughts on the potential of trading Panarin?
I'm good. Excited to get the three of us together finally. When it comes to Panarin, I'm a little indifferent. I could see both sides of the argument. So, personally, I'd love to see him stay, but I'd also love to see him score a little bit more in the playoffs in order to do so. So that's my take on it.
So, yeah, let's just go ahead and dive into that playoff conversation first and foremost, because it is really the glaring aspect to the Panarin equation here. Because when you're looking at his future with the team, well, the Rangers want to make a cup run. They want to get that Stanley Cup. And Artemi Panarin, you expect him every year to be a big factor in that. And he is during the regular season, helps them win games, puts up a lot of points. But then when it gets to the postseason, he's had a tendency to disappear. So, Eric, when you're considering that aspect of Panarin, the fact that he has kind of went into shadow mode during the last couple of playoff runs, do you think that affects his ability to stay with the team? Does that affect your confidence in his ability to help the team in the future?
I mean, it definitely has an impact on his status with the team because, like you mentioned, throughout the regular season, he's the Rangers' best offensive player. In the 4 full seasons that he's been with the Rangers since signing, he's led the team in points every single year. Just last year, led the team with 92 points in a full 82-game season. But at the end of the day, is he a big help to get us to the playoffs? Yes, it would probably be a lot more difficult to get there without him. But then once the things actually start to matter the most, and you're in a 7-game series against a very strong New Jersey Devils team, and then all you get is 2 assists in game 1, both coming on the power play, and then just go scoreless the rest, that's definitely something that has to change. So it's Panarin is extremely valuable to the Rangers, but it can really only make him as important if he's not contributing in the postseason as well, where that's when the Rangers really need to get things going.
Yeah, that's crunch time. It's the postseason. You expect players to elevate their game. But Collin, when you're seeing Artemi Panarin more than one season now not elevating his game, failing to elevate his game, and in fact having his game decline in productivity, how does that make you feel about his future with the Rangers?
It makes me a little wary. I look at a player like Panarin who's killed it in the regular season, and to me, the last memorable postseason moment he's had is that Game 7 goal against the Penguins, which is one of my favorite calls and favorite goals in recent history. But he starts to float his name around with another former player, Rick Nash, a guy who was always great in the regular season, and when the postseason showed up, he would score the 7th goal and a 7-2 win. His points were inconsequential. And, at least he scored a couple times, not a lot. Panarin has been completely non-existent, in my opinion, the past 2 postseasons outside of that Game 7 overtime goal. He's just out there skating, it looks like. Turnovers are still a problem. He was a -2. And when you have a team that's scoring 15 goals in 3 games like the Rangers did in their 3 wins against the Devils, to only put up 2 points from a guy who's making $11+ million a year, it definitely hurts. And I know that him and Drury have gotten into altercations in the offseasons about it as well. So it can't be good on the relationship on that end.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something to keep an eye on. The fact that Drury has invested so much into Panarin, really to be that extra player to push them into the Stanley Cup, and he's failed on that account. Right now, when you're looking at cap friendly, he's making the most money on the team, and it's not really even close in terms of the forwards. He's at 11.6 million, and then the next closest is Mika Zibanejad at 8.5, which is just a huge, significant difference between the two. Eric, is he overpaid? Is Artemi Panarin overpaid at this point in his career at 11.6 million AAV?
So when you I'm going to say no, right? He's making a lot of money, to have one player make up almost like an eighth, probably over an eighth of like the team's entire spending money. Like it seems like a lot, but it seems to be like the new trend recently throughout the league, especially when Panarin did sign that contract in 2019, even just like the year beforehand, everyone who was putting up numbers similar to Panarin was earning contracts of that size. So like you even look at like today's NHL players who are putting up less points than Panarin are earning more money now at this point. So I think just like looking at the league as a whole, is he overpaid? Probably not. But when it comes to the Rangers and their current situation, I would say yes. And the Rangers do have a large problem of overpaying players. Trouba 100% overpaid, Kreider overpaid. So on a team where they're just constantly handing out contracts that are too large, you can't have a guy like Panarin who's making 11.6 million every year if you want to construct another full strong team around him. So I think when you look at the discussion of trading Panarin, trading him for his playoff performance probably wouldn't be as influential as something as simple as leaving more money to give more room for Drew to do things in the future.
Yeah, Colin, I want to get your take on it as well. I saw a little bit of an expression on your face when I asked that question to Eric. Maybe a little eye roll when he said immediately, no, he's not overpaid. So what's your take on it?
I think that he is overpaid. I think that given the current cap constraints, I'd say yes. I also disagree with Kreider being overpaid. Trouba and Panarin, those deals, had the cap kept going up, wouldn't have looked as bad. But with COVID, as we all know, the cap kind of came to a screeching halt. And only now is it finally starting to go up again. Those deals would have aged better. But because we had such a stagnant cap for such a long time, they don't really look as good. The players that are signing now for more money and putting up less players have higher upside. And as the cap continues to grow, will look better with time. These contracts are in the middle of their deal, and the cap is still at the level it was when they signed it, maybe a little bit higher. So to me, that's why I feel like they don't look as good. I mean, I love Panarin. I love the fact that he took a pay cut and basically told the Islanders to screw off and left more money on the table to come and play for a real New York team. But it's hard. It's hard, like Eric said, when you're taking up that much cap and really it's great during the regular season, but we need you in that postseason to elevate your game. And it's almost like he takes a step back.
Yeah, it is like he takes a step back. I mean, you're looking at point per game totals, over point per game totals in the regular season versus this past series where he had 1 point in total through 7 games. So it is a step backward, and it's a significant one that, you could argue killed the Rangers against the Devils. Like the Rangers should have won that series. They had a lead at 1 point. They looked like the favorites to win. And then Panarin disappeared and everybody else started falling apart. There's a lot to be said about that. And then there's another aspect of this conversation where you're talking about the left wing spot for the Rangers. Is he holding up that development there? There's other younger players that want to rise, want to ascend up these lines and become stars for the Rangers. But they do have this star in Artemi Panarin who's getting paid a bunch of money. He has to be in the top 6, getting significant playing time. So, Eric, what are your thoughts on the situation here with the Rangers not being able to fully develop some of these other younger left wingers that they have? And do you think that shipping Panarin off would present a good opportunity to move those guys up and hopefully find the superstar in the Rangers prospect pool?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of those like unfortunate situations where Alexis Lafreniere, drafted first overall in 2020, he's had almost no opportunity to really break out throughout like a full season campaign. He's had like games and moments where he gets top 6 ice time, but he's never had a consistent top 6 role right there. And that mainly comes to the fact that the top 6 left wing spots are being held by Chris Kreider and Artemi Panarin. And, like there are times when like both Panarin and Kreider have been going through rough patches where they spend a little bit of time down in the bottom 6. But if Lafreniere really wants to have that breakout campaign, coming into a new 2-year bridge deal where he's really going to be trying to prove himself, unless he switches over to the right side and fills in one of those right wing positions, there's really no room for Lafreniere to possibly break out right there in the top 6. So either a Kreider trade or a Panarin trade would really be the only ways to open up that spot, because you're not going to have someone like Panarin who's making 11.6, putting up consistent 90-point seasons, or a guy like Chris Kreider who's also making a decent amount of money and, scoring 30, 40, even possibly 50 goals. That's not going to be a bottom six player. So if Lafreniere wants that opportunity, it would take some sort of move right there, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah, and Colin, how are you feeling about potentially moving on from Panarin? Not only just because, as you mentioned earlier, moving on from him just because of the playoff woes is kind of a little bit of an extreme response. Moving on from him just because of the money, but maybe moving on from him in order to develop other players like Alexi Lafreniere. How do you feel about that?
I think it's a gamble. I think you're banking on either like one of our prospects, a Lafreniere, to take that next step, and then if they don't, and he falls flat on his face, you have a gaping hole at the left wing position. I agree that you can't justify putting a guy like Panarin in the bottom six. Like I would or the third line. I mean, wouldn't make sense. He's getting paid 11.25 or 11.5 or something like that. It's a lot of money for a third line guy, and he doesn't really put up third line production. He puts up that top line production, and we really have. It's not a one line and a two line. We have a 1A and a 1B, in my opinion. They both produce so well. So for me, if Lafreniere really wants to get that time, he has to switch to the right side, because I'm not really trying to trade Kreider, and I just can't see anybody willing to take Panarin's cap hit without us retaining cap, which also isn't completely out of the question.
Maybe the solution here, Eric, I'm going to say it, maybe the solution is to trade Alexi Lafreniere. I got flamed for that mid-season, and then everybody in the offseason wanted to trade Alexi Lafreniere, so I'm standing here laughing at you all, trying to burn down society like the Joker, because I know that a lot of you now agree with me, even though you all tried to kill me for it in the comment section months ago. Again, I think it's worth having that conversation. Maybe the next time the three of us link up, we'll talk about Alexi Lafreniere on his bridge deal and whether or not we have confidence in him going into it. But back to Artemi Panarin. Eric, more about, Panarin and this trade opportunity here, right? Because we're talking about offloading this $11.6 million contract. What do you think the Rangers could even get in return for this? Because it's not easy to move a contract like this. Do you think that the Rangers could even improve their team making this move in any way? Could they even fetch a superstar in return? Is anyone taking on this kind of money?
Yeah, I mean, so it's hard to say, because at this point of the offseason, a lot of teams have like finalized their rosters going into the upcoming season. So I feel like at this point in time, you're not going to see like a blockbuster, like 1-for-1 trade. And I don't know if that's what the Rangers really need, because, the main reason for trading a guy like Panarin would be to clear up that cap space. So, and at the same time, the Rangers don't want draft picks right now. We're in a mode where Chris Drury believes that this team he's constructed has the ability to win the Stanley Cups. You're not going to want to immediately go into like building for the future right now. You kind of want to put all your eggs in one basket. So if a trade were to go through, which I don't even know how likely one would be, I think you would see like Panarin plus maybe like a couple of younger prospects traded for like 2 or 3 like fully established NHL players that don't make too much money. Maybe their salaries would combine to the same amount as Panarin, but like it comes in the form of just like 2 solid players rather than just one overpaid superstar.
Yeah, and then Colin, what do you think that the Rangers get in return for our Artemi Panarin trade?
I think Eric's exactly right in saying that most teams at this point have their lineups constructed, their cap pretty much where it's at. Everybody's made their signings. So finding that amount of space in the books would be tough unless it was a team that was like the Rangers were when they signed Panarin, in a big rebuild, but with a lot of cap flexibility and willing to take on that kind of contract, or even a team that's willing to take on like 75% of it, or it would still take a lot. I feel like we'd have to throw in a little bit, but it would be similar, in my opinion, to the Erik Karlsson trade. I mean, obviously it would have had to have happened sooner, but I feel like you could look at that return. I don't exactly know it offhand, but I feel like it would be similar to that in prospects and players going back and forth in order to make the cap work. But I think that is like a blueprint you could use in order to make this trade happen if they were interested.
Yeah, and I think that could be an interesting avenue here. One thing that I am curious about, how does Artemi Panarin perform with a bald head? Eric, how do you think that's going to affect him? He said that he got rid of his demons that were lurking in his hair. His hair is gone. Are you expecting a massive season out of a bald Artemi Panarin?
Dude, I think we actually could see an improvement. And, we make a lot of jokes about it because all he did was just shave his head and go bald. But, like, just listening to interviews with Panera and things he's said, like the reason he played so poorly in the playoffs was a confidence issue. He got shut down after game one. He just really wasn't able to bounce back. And a lot of it had to do with his emotions and managing with the stress and like everything that was going on in the playoffs. So if him shaving his head, if he is crazy enough to believe that like that's what he needed to do, if that he's going to head into the 2023-24 season with full confidence, ready to go, that might actually just be like the craziest thing to make it work. So I think that also has a lot to do with the trade, like kind of how we've discussed, a lot of teams have their rosters finalized for now. If Panarin were to get traded anytime soon, I think the Rangers would at least want to see how he performs throughout at least the first half of this upcoming season. So, if he can hit the ground running and just be on pace for a 90-point season again, maybe even finally break that 100-point threshold, then I think that would be enough to solidify him remaining on the Rangers for the remainder of his contract.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, let's see how he paces out during the regular season, and maybe this is a deadline conversation to have, but I think it's good to look at now and just consider all the facts going into the season. But Collin, tying into the baldness and tying into the confidence issues, right? Because that's really what's been affecting Artemi Panarin, as Eric just mentioned. What is your take on his confidence level? And do you think that, is this something where mid-season, maybe his confidence starts to waver just a little bit? Is that when you decide you're jumping ship? Like if he's not looking like his most confident version of himself mid-season, then you start to bring up this conversation again and trade him? Or do you just stick it out and knowing that he's probably going to end the regular season on a strong note?
It's tough because as much as I hate the money side of it, I love a guy like Panera, and he does incredible things for us during the regular season. And his regular season production isn't the problem. It's the postseason production, as we've said many times before in this episode alone. I think it's tough to judge him off his regular season performance because he really hasn't taken a step back. This is last year, the 92 points was the first time he's put up less in a season. Every season he's gotten better. Even in the shortened season, he was on pace to break that 100-point mark. So he's improved every season except for this past being his worst season in the last 3-4 years. And a 92-point season being your worst than the past 3-4 years is not a bad season by any means. I think I would like to see how he does. I'm hoping that he thinks that whatever demons he had, he exercised them, and maybe that smooth head will make him a little more aerodynamic on the back check. But I'm interested to see how he approaches the season, and I hope that he can get it together and remain on the team because, like I said, he's a great player, star, and you need a star in this league to win. But it's also hard to win with a contract over $10 million. And that's been proven outside of this past season. The Golden Knights were the first to do it. There had never been a team with a contract over $10 million that had won a cup. So hopefully we'll be the second. But again, it is all about his confidence and how he approaches the season. And he seems to be taking it very seriously. So hopefully that means good things in the future.
Yeah, I do think that his contract really constrains the Rangers and what they want to do in terms of building their roster. It makes things so difficult, but I am confident in Artemi Panarin. I think that the bounce back season is on the way. But one other thing that we do have to factor into this equation before we wrap here is age. He's now 31 years old. As you mentioned, he's gotten better every single year until this past season. Now 31. Are we expecting some sort of a regression, Eric? I know that you and I have kind of talked about that in the past. I know you wrote an article today on EmpireSportsMedia.com mentioning that he could be a player due to his age that does begin to regress this season. So how are you feeling about his age, and do you think that a regression is on the way?
I don't know if it's on the way, but I definitely think it's in the realm of possibility where, in the NHL, a player's prime years are really from 27 till 31. And then it's so I think at this current season, you might not see a significant regression from Panarin, but you might start to see little bits and pieces hinting towards it coming in the future, which in the trade discussion, it's if the Rangers are going to eventually move Panarin at some point throughout the next 3 seasons before his contract expires, it's do they want to do it now when his value is at its peak? Because once that age starts to become a real factor and his stats start going down, there's not going to be many teams that are going to be wanting to trade for an aging, declining forward right there. So that's kind of just why I think a lot of people are speculating a possible trade coming soon. It's just because his value right now is at its peak and it's only going to start to go down from here. I don't know if his stats are going to make an immediate decline, but he might just be skating a little slower this season or something. You're going to start to see those little hints that hint at that.
Yeah, and I'm actually going to throw my take in there before I throw it over to you, Collin. I'm going to say that with Artemi Panarin, why I could see him regress is because of a change in a system, right? We saw him improve his point total every year with Gerard Gallant. We saw him do great things with Gerard Gallant, but that was a totally different system and structured offense than what we're going to see from Peter Laviolette. Because we talked all offseason long, Eric, about how Laviolette's going to have way more of a structured offensive scheme. Like there's going to be set things that Artemi Panarin has to do, and he's going to be in a little bit more of a box than he was with Gerard Gallant, where he could kind of just freestyle, do whatever. And we know that's really what Panarin's so good at, is freestyling, playmaking, passing across the ice and everything like that. So I don't think it would be out of the realm of possibility to see him have some sort of a point regression just because he's playing in a completely different system. And in fact, I think that he could be a better player, have a better plus minus, and in the eyes of the fans, be a more productive, or not more productive, but a more efficient player despite being less productive in his point total. So that's my take on it. I think that we could see a regression in point total, but an improvement in overall quality and performance of play. But Collin, what is your take on a potential Artemi Panarin regression?
I actually think it's not. I think he's gonna improve next season. I think he's gonna benefit from Laviolette's system. I get the defensive side of it, but he played well with Tortorella, who's always been a very defensive-minded coach. And Gerard Gallant was not a great 5-on-5 coach. So if you think about the 5-on-5 production going up, you're gonna have to have points going up all around. I imagine Panarin will actually thrive in a system like this, where obviously it holds you a little more accountable defensively, and it'll allow him the freedom and also 5-on-5 structure to go and score more goals and get more assists. I think Laviolette's system will allow most of the Rangers, I want to say all, to become the most complete players that they can be, because it'll work on their defensive game and help those defensive players like Mika Zibanejad and Chris Kreider, like the penalty killers, shine on all facets. But it'll also help the guys who aren't as defensively minded, like a Vinny Trocheck or Artemi Panarin and guys like that, work on their defensive game while also upping their 5-on-5 play. I think all around, hiring a guy like that was the right hire, and it'll help everybody through and through.
And I think that
before you wrap up, Tony, I just wanted to also throw in the fact that like whoever's playing on that second line with Panarin will also have a huge impact on it. Where, Panarin and Trocheck have blended pretty well in that first season with him. Patrick Kane didn't really fit in that well on the second line, and that caused pretty much like a huge destruction of chemistry right there. And, nothing's been confirmed yet, but it's projected that Blake Wheeler is going to fill in that role. So I think his performance and his adjustment to the Rangers will also have a huge impact on Panarin's performance as well.
Yeah, 100%. I was just going to add that I think making Artemi Panarin a more complete version of himself might be the key to fixing those postseason woes. As you were mentioning, Collin, having him just improve defensively, improving the 5-on-5 play. The Rangers' postseason woes in general, I mean, last year was a woe for the entire team. But with Artemi Panarin in particular, I think having him more rounded helps him better in a more intense playoff environment. It should hopefully help him improve his play. And then maybe next year, this conversation, we look back on it and think it was just a ridiculous one to have. But right now, it was worth having. I think that it's an interesting topic of conversation. For me personally, I'm for keeping Artemi Panarin. I don't think that it's somebody that I would be in a rush to ship off, but I'd keep an eye on it over the course of the regular season. If the right deal comes into place at the deadline, I would personally consider it if I were Chris Drury. But that pretty much wraps this one up. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. Comment your thoughts on the topic down below in the comment section. And we'll catch you all in the next one. Have a good one. And let's go Rangers.
Let's go Rangers.